tell us a little bit about who you are, how you got started with writing, and what kind of led you down the path to eventually writing Tales of Battle?
Yeah, I was born in a small island in Vermont, right near the Quebec border. I grew up with a hearing disability, so I went through a lot of speech therapy, so writing always came more naturally for me than speaking, especially because kids can be pretty mean. So I got picked on for a long time about my speech, and writing just always was more fluid and an easier way for me to kind of, I guess, let myself loose, because I couldn't always find the words verbally, but I could always find them writing-wise. And then ended up being a genetics major in university, and my English 102 teacher said, "Why are you in this class? You're too good at writing." And I was like, never thought about that. Always loved it, but never thought I was like too good for my own standard even. And then she ended up pretty much telling me I was a waste of talent if I didn't become an English major. And I was taking A and P at the time and not doing that great. And I was like, wow, this class sucks. And that teacher was like, "You're not very good." So I was like, go with the teacher that's telling me how great I am and kind of boost my ego. And I kind of just switched and was like, whatever, I'll just go for it. So yeah, that led me to writing, and then now here I am.
Yeah, yeah, it's always good to have teachers that are honest with you.
To an extent.
Yeah, to accept. Sometimes it can be have the opposite effect, but yeah, it seems like in your case it worked out pretty well. Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Tales of Battle? Like how'd you come up with the premise and how you came to publish it?
Yeah, I was working at a gas station overnight, and I ended up just bringing a notebook and kind of writing because I was on the island I was from after university. And there's very few people on the island. So after 9 o'clock, I got maybe two customers. So I spent my work time writing. And I think just early on, Redwall was my favorite series when I was like in fourth and fifth, sixth grade. It was the first book I remember. I was like, man, this is so cool. These badgers and foxes and rats fighting each other. And I was like, what about like if humans did that? Ended up kind of just happening. I love foxes, kind of just grabbed a fox, thought about an animal that would be a really like good looking, handsome villain type. Then he ended up being my actual main hero somehow. Don't really know how it happened.
Mhm.
And yeah, and then I added some elves, some humans, kind of a little backstory, and kind of just ran with it. And now, book one is published, book two is being edited, and I'm writing book six currently. So I kind of let the story write itself, and I was just the person running the pen.
Yeah. I like that it's got all sorts of like I love the humanoid animal idea, but then you also still have like elves and like it's cool to have all that stuff in there. Like, is there a reason you didn't just go with the animal side of it and you wanted the rest of it, or just kind of happened that way?
I think I really just love elves. I'm not going to lie. I think everybody does, Tolkien
Mhm.
and elves, and I think everybody just kind of enjoys it. I think there's something really regal about them. And I also wanted to kind of tie together real world fantasy worlds that people know in the world I was building. And I thought the best way to do that was have some humans, have some elves, because we can tie those into fantasy very easily. People have an easy grasp on them. And then add in a bunch of my animal humanoids that people probably don't have as good of a grasp on and give them human characteristics and kind of tie in the world that way. So it's kind of tying in like three different worlds into one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. So this is book one. You said you're writing book six. So did you kind of think through how many books you wanted, or are you just writing them until you run out of story? Like what's your method there?
At first I was just writing, and I was like, 3 books sounds good. I finished my 3 books, thought I was done, and I was like, man, a prequel sounds really fun. So I wrote a prequel, and then I wrote whatever a sidequel is called. I guess maybe a sidequel. I don't know what they're actually called, but a side piece in in a different part of the world. And then I ended up being like, man, it'd be really cool to tie in this spin-off to my other characters from books 1 through 3, because I missed them. Because sometimes you write and you're like, man, I miss those characters. And I kind of wanted one more big journey with them to give them a more finite ending, I think. And I was in a Buddhist meditation, and I was trying really hard to focus, and all of a sudden this stuff just popped in my head because of what was happening in the meditation. And I was like, shit. I'm like sneaking on my cell phone, trying not to have like the monks see me and trying not to have anybody else see me, because they're gonna be like, what are you doing? And I'm like trying to text myself all this stuff really quick, like just these random ideas. And I got back and I just kind of started writing. And I was like, well, I guess if I'm finishing it here. So, and I think
Yeah.
6 books is a good amount because I don't really want to kill my series. I mean, I love Redwall, but it's like what, 23 books or something. And I don't know if I want it to be that big, but I think 6 decent sized books is a good ending point for me with the series. And at some point, you kind of got to let go and move on to something else. So,
Yeah, definitely. It's always the worst that ideas always seem to come at like the worst possible times. Like they're just all of a sudden you're doing something that you do not have time to take notes or you can't take notes. And then that's when all the ideas show up.
yeah, for me, it's either in the middle of teaching, it's in the middle of a Buddhist meditation. Sometimes when I'm at church, it happens there. So it's always the places that you don't want to get caught on your phone because everybody's going to be like staring at you or totally judging you and you know it.
Mhm.
But you also don't want to waste your good ideas. And it's just like, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you did quite a bit of just kind of going with the flow, but did you do any outlining? Did you kind of plan those 3 books out or did you just kind of write them?
I just wrote them. I actually had a lot of fun just kind of letting the characters write themselves. Like my Jaguar, Caesar, he was originally supposed to be this brutal, beautiful enemy. And that was what I thought it was set in stone. And as I wrote the book, it just totally changed. Everything changed. The whole narrative changed. What I thought it was going to end like changed. Book 6, I had a more of a concrete idea, I think, but I never did an outline. In my head, I just had kind of a beginning and an end and some filler in there. So I had like some links to go through it so far. But I am trying to outline my next series after this just because, I wrote book 1 and then I did the map, which was crazy pain. It was so difficult to try to link everything that I wrote and make it make sense in a map. So I think I want to do it the
Mm,
opposite way this time and see if it's better, make my map and then go from there. Because in book 2, I explore more of the world and I'm trying to get through the map for that book right now and I have no idea how to navigate it.
yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of one where I don't have to necessarily have it all plotted out, but I do struggle with like if I don't understand the mechanics, then I don't know how to write the story. So like if I don't know how the magic system works or if I don't understand the map, like I can't even start because I'm just like I don't know how to tell people that they're going from like this part to this part. Like
Yeah. I think
yeah.
I just started writing, and then afterward, when I went to do the map, I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing. And the magic system, it doesn't take place in book 1; it does in 2. It's probably going to be a mess through the whole series, but it's pretty much elemental, so it's not a super in depth magic system, I don't think.
Mhm.
But I would like to. I do see the positives in plotting that part. I think if you're going to do a magic system and certain very like fantastical elements that are kind of deep,
Mhm.
I've now learned that plotting is probably better in that way, just because when you're in the middle of writing and then you go back and you're like, oh crap. So
Yeah.
I think my next series, I've learned that as much fun as I had being really fluid and kind of just going with it, that there are certain things that I will plan out ahead of time next time.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago that about like I'm generally fine. I don't ever get any writer's block about like where to take the story. I can generally figure. I mean, I might for a little bit, but then I can figure out what to do. But I do get tripped up on like mechanics, like we were saying. Like, it's like I know what I want to do, but I need to figure out how this part of the magic system or whatever works to get there. So it's kind of like a weird like it's not really writer's block. It's just like I don't know how to do this in the context of what I've created.
I almost call it reader. I think of it as reader's block because writing it doesn't really matter. And then I
Mhm.
think of it from a reader perspective, and I'm like, man, that's going to mess someone up. Like, if I don't
Yeah.
have something in here that makes sense, they're just going to be like, no. And
Yeah.
it's funny because in university, a lot of teachers were like, if you're writing fantasy or fiction, nothing matters. Do whatever you want. Punctuation doesn't matter.
Mhm.
They're like, it might matter to publishers, but really, you can do whatever rules you want. And sometimes I think like that because they pound it into our heads. And
Mhm.
then I'm like, for readers, I mean, for a writer, yeah, maybe, but for a reader, it's not always the case.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I even think about like Harry Potter is one where it's like I love that series, but there's issues like from book 1 to book 7 where like this this doesn't really work, you know? Like I don't know if it wasn't thought out or if it just was like she was just writing it and didn't worry too much about it. But I agree. There's like the reader thing of like it works for like as the writer, like I don't care. Like I know what it's supposed to be. But for
Right.
the reader is like, wait, that doesn't make sense, and then it can take them out of it, and you don't want that to happen.
It also depends on the reader because I actually went to a Comic Con in Denver or whatever, and I went to a writers panel, and they were talking about Harry Potter's the magic system. But some of the complaints, I was like, man, you all like went real into that. You all
Hmm.
like dove real deep into the money and everything. I was like, I never thought about the money, never paid, never cared about the money.
Yeah.
I care about the spells because like, how does that spell exactly work? But at the same time, Harry Potter, for instance, is like the real first of its kind for the most part
Yeah.
to do what it did. So it was like, does it really matter? And then I think that set the bar for magic systems going forward as far as that goes. But yeah, people were
Hmm.
like complaining about random stuff that I was like, man, I never ever would have thought that. So I'm sure mine will get torn apart in some ways, but
Yeah.
it's to be expected.
Yeah, I thought there's if you want to go down a wild rabbit hole, like there are crazy thoughts about Harry Potter and like the different plot holes and conspiracy theories about how different characters did stuff. Like I'm the same as you. Like I never all of a sudden someone brought up the money thing and I was like, I didn't even like I still don't even know if I understand what you're talking about.
I
you know?
don't. I was sitting on that panel and I was like, I'm more confused than I would have been not knowing. So
Yeah.